A lot of their children did not come back home. They have no idea whatever happened to their children.
Tonight, Carcross First Nation begins a search for answers at Chutla Residential School.
As I carried her, I gave her life.
A grieving mother is finally able to tell her daughter's story.
The vote here that's all the people from Fort Chip, the hamlet Fort Chip. They evacuated.
And one Fort Chipewyan man takes fire evacuees on board his own boat. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. The first ground search at a former residential school site in the Yukon has begun. As the community continues to grapple with the legacy of the school, many are hoping the search will yield answers and healing. Here's Sarah Connors with that story.
With every tedious, painstaking movement, families of missing residential school children may be one step closer to learning what happened to their loved ones.
And a lot of their children did not come back home. They have no idea whatever happened to their children.
While the site of the former Chutla Indian Residential School in Carcross, Yukon has since returned to earth, its reputation of abuse and brutality continues to haunt the community and the territory. With two schools operating from 1911 to 1969, the Yukon Residential School's Missing Children Working Group estimates as many as 42 students died here.
It feels good to finally have it come to rest and to put it behind us.
For the community's chief, closure is needed for families who have been searching for answers for decades, but that also comes with mixed feelings.
Some people are anxious to find out, and some more people are not sure what to do. You know, if they do find something, then what to do then. So
the search will use ground-penetrating radar and a magnetometer to collect data and locate potential grave sites. While it's not happy work for lead surveyor Peter Tokic, it's work that must be done.
We feel the weight of the work, and we really hope that we can bring those closures. But on the other hand, we have to focus on our job to do it correctly, to do it in the right way.
With over $1 million in funding from the territorial and federal governments, the plan is to continue searches in other communities across the territory in the years to come. While it will take time to uncover the secrets that may be buried here, the ultimate hope is this work will eventually lead to healing.
It's going to find peace. It's going to help with closure of people that have gone through the residential school.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Carcross.
And the National Indian Residential School Crisis Line is available for survivors or others who might need support. That number is 1-866-925-4419. To northwestern Ontario now, where it's been 5 years since an Anishinaabe teen was killed in her community. After years of a publication ban, her family is speaking out to keep her story alive. They say the killer was her next door neighbor. Tamara Pimentel has more.
When something shines so bright, such as a mirror or a diamond, it shatters. That's the only way I can describe it. It's what I feel and have to carry. And that mirror will never shine the way it once did. Because I carried her, I gave her life. I breastfed her, and she was stolen from me. And a part of me, I feel like a part of me is gone.
Autumn Andy was 15 years old when she was killed in her home community of Big Grassy River First Nation 5 years ago.
I remember this day.
As her mother Angeline and her auntie Gina Andy go through photos, they talk about Autumn's love for the land and cotton candy clouds over Lake of the Woods. Eating wild food and drinking cedar tea were her favorite.
She loved being outdoors. She loved camping. She loved swimming. She loved golfing. She really loved hunting and fishing and trapping. She enjoyed walking this earth. She enjoyed walking on Mother Earth.
I always called her baby girl. She was just like my daughter. Even when I think of it, she's like my granddaughter, like my first granddaughter. That's how I see Autumn.
A publication ban kept Angeline silent for years. Now she wants to tell her daughter's story. Autumn was last seen June 10, 2018. 3 days later, her body was found near the grounds of Pegmagabu School.
So there is camera surveillance on the top corner here.
Angeline says everything was caught on these security cameras where it appeared Autumn was abducted.
In this area here, there was earth taken. There was DNA in this area, why that earth was taken.
DNA evidence suggests Autumn Andy was sexually abused and suffered many injuries, including brain trauma. Daryl Tuesday Willie was charged in connection with her death. He was 24 at the time. According to court documents, in June 2019, Tuesday Willie was charged with 4 counts, including first-degree murder, sexual assault, improperly interfering with human remains, and confinement. He initially pleaded not guilty on all 4 counts in August 2021, then later guilty to the lesser included offense of second-degree murder and improperly interfering with human remains. He was sentenced to life in prison, not eligible for parole for 13 years, while concurrently serving 2 years for improperly interfering with human remains. Angeline says Autumn and her killer were known to each other. He was once her neighbor in a townhouse complex on Reserve, where she still resides today.
He was hiding on the other side of the walls of our apartment after what he did to Autumn. He lived there for about a year after we moved in, but at the time of Autumn's death, he did not live there. I didn't know how to accept. I felt I had to suppress, partly because of the publication ban, and that's been such a struggle, and to this day it's still a struggle to keep my composure, to be humble, and still on that packed trail.
Angeline says she rarely steps foot behind the school grounds. This is where she believes Autumn was covered in a blanket and tree branches in June 2018. Autumn would have been 20 years old next week. In honor of her, Angeline joined the Big Grassy River First Response Team and has been taking self-defense classes with her 7-year-old daughter, Elena. She encourages other women to do the same.
None of the young girls and women deserve that. I don't deserve to live this life the way I have to continue the person I want to be, who she helped me to be, who Autumn helped me to be. I love you, Autumn. I love you, my baby. Well, I offered tobacco to the water for a baby girl. I prayed to the water for a baby girl. She was so special to me. The Creator gave her to me, and she was taken from me in the end. She didn't deserve what happened to her.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Big Grassy River First Nation.
Tragic story. Before we head to break, a reminder that you can reach out anytime with your stories or opinions on anything you see here. You can send us your emails to news@aptn.ca, or you can leave a comment on our website, aptnnews.ca. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. News coverage of birth alerts by an Indigenous news organization has wound up before the Supreme Court. More on that coming up after the break. Welcome back. The community of Fort Chipewyan in northern Alberta still has an evacuation order in effect due to a large fire. 232 firefighters are trying to prevent the blaze from approaching the community. APTN's Chris Stewart spoke to knowledge keeper Dennis Shaw to help people evacuate to safety.
You want a little more?
Sure. Let's do it.
You're good?
Yeah. Smile.
Dennis Schott has been traveling the Athabasca River since he was a boy. It connects Fort Chipewyan to the communities of Fort MacKay and Fort McMurray to the south. In the summer, the only way in and out of Fort Chipewyan is the river or the airport. When the evacuation began on May 30th, Fort MacKay First Nation leadership asked Schott, a Fort MacKay resident, to help evacuees get to safety by boat. He and his friend Shay quickly agreed.
This river goes down to Lake Athabasca, where we're having this evacuation.
Where's Fort Chip from here?
North, about 5 hours from here.
And you've taken two trips so
Two
far?
trips, yeah. Came home for 1 o'clock in the morning the first night.
Schott took myself and APTN reporter Daniel Parody on his boat. He spots an approaching boat just finishing their 5-hour trip.
And like here, just downriver, a boat just coming in from Lake Athabasca.
So when people are coming, are they evacuating?
Yeah, evacuating, yep.
There's a line of boats across the nearby riverbank.
The boats here that's all the people from Fort Chip, the hamlet Fort Chip. They evacuated, which I know they don't want to, but they have no choice.
He says on his trip, he helped some evacuees who were in trouble.
We came across the people that they were still going, but he said, I don't think we'll make it to Fort MacKay. Could you give some gas? I said, yes, because that's our intention.
For Schott, it was a great feeling to be able to help.
They were just totally big smile, like my friend and I, Shay. Both were just happy. Like, we felt good when we helped them, and they were just saying thank you, like for Fort MacKay First Nation for doing this. Like, my buddy and I were very happy. We felt good.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Fort MacKay, Alberta.
Good work there, Dennis. Well, a birth alert flags expectant parents to hospital staff without their consent by a child welfare agency. Social workers can then apprehend newborns at birth. The practice is supposedly banned by most provinces. In British Columbia, it was the work of Indigenous journalists, including Brielle Morgan, now working as a freelancer, that brought attention to the issue. Now, the release of documents that helped their reporting is before the Supreme Court of BC this week. Brielle Morgan joined Daryl Stranger to talk about it late last week.
Brielle, thank you so much for joining us here today. Now, your team has been investigating birth alerts for a number of years now. So can you fill us in with the latest in this story?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to be clear, I'm no longer with the Indigenous team, but I've been working on this as a freelancer and have a good relationship with the folks on the Indigenous team. And so the latest in the story is, ever since we broke the story in 2021 that the BC government had characterized its own practice as illegal and unconstitutional. When we broke that in 2021, we followed up with a number of Freedom of Information requests trying to get more information about this. And we filed it with a number of ministries that are involved in BC, including the Ministry of Children and Family Development, the Attorney General's Office, and the Citizen Services, which handles privacy complaints from citizens, which is very much at the heart of the birth alerts. And it took a long time to get information back. And when we received this information, there were whole pages redacted. There was lots of information that just wasn't, that was blacked out, and we weren't clear on what was missing. And so over the last couple of years, we've been pushing to have more of that information revealed by appealing to the Office of the Information and Privacy Commissioner in BC. And so this is just one records package out of 3 that the Privacy Commissioner's Office is currently investigating about birth alerts.
So did the province explain why they wanted these documents back at all?
Yeah, so they said that the information around their characterization of these birth alerts as illegal and unconstitutional had been released in error, and that should have been subject to solicitor-client privilege or advice from their internal advice from lawyers. But the Indigenous team felt very strongly that it was very much in the public interest for the public to know that the government had called these illegal and unconstitutional, and we felt like we had a lot of questions around that. So, we're still waiting for the government to explain whether they're going to notify the hundreds of parents that have been subjected to birth alerts in recent years, that they have been subjected to these alerts and that their privacy was violated. They haven't answered that question about whether they're going to notify parents, whether they're going to apologize to them. And that's something that Indigenous leaders have called for, and that the representative for children and youth in BC has called for.
Well, see, on the subject of returning the documents, what was your and the Indigenous team's response, to being asked to return those documents?
Well, we consulted with our lawyer, and our lawyer assured us that we had a constitutional right to publish this information. And so we responded to MCFD and the Attorney General's office with that information, saying we have a right to publish. We feel like it's very much in the public interest to know this, and we're not going to return the information.
And so you just mentioned, my last question for you here, now that the dispute is heading for the BC Supreme Court, what are the greater implications for press freedom here?
Well, I've had to nerd out on this a lot, and this is something that I'm learning about as we go. And in BC, we have freedom of information, the FIPA is our privacy law. And under privacy law in BC, there's something called Section 25, and that's a public interest override. And so when we got this information back and it was full of blacked out information, we asked the Privacy Commissioner's Office to apply Section 25, which is a public interest override. So even though MCFD was saying, this should be covered under solicitor-client privilege, this shouldn't be revealed because of solicitor-client privilege, we said public interest should trump that. And so we're asking the Privacy Commissioner to make a decision around that. But what's really interesting is that MCFD, or the Ministry of Children and Family Development, is refusing to share the unredacted information with the Privacy Commissioner so that they can look at it and decide whether it's in the public interest that this particular part of the records be made public. So I know that's convoluted, but basically the ministry is not letting this independent oversight body review the information so that they can make a decision, and that's why we're going to BC Supreme Court.
Well, certainly plenty to look ahead to with the story as well. But Brielle, we'll have to leave it there, but I want to say thank you, miigwech, to you for coming on, and great work by you and the Indigenous team on this story.
Thanks so much, Daryl.
Time for another quick break, but you'll want to stick around for our story on an online competition featuring mermen that has gone viral.
I've done challenges before for our community, and it's a lot about morale and just being able to laugh and have fun together.
Welcome back. Well, maybe you've seen them, social media pictures of First Nations mermen. It seems First Nations in Manitoba have been having some fun on social media, with more and more joining the trend. One TikTok user claims it all started in Pimachikamak, Cree Nation. Wayway-Sakapo First Nation had their own call out for mermen photos. Gabby Brandon, a fourth grade teacher who set up the competition there, got a dozen submissions. The merman with the most likes and comments won $100 thanks to an anonymous donation from leadership.
Sure where it started, but it seems like the northern communities were the first to jump on there. I've seen Puckatawagan and St. Teresa, and it was just to be silly, I guess, to be funny and to bring people some laughs. I've done challenges before for our community, and it's a lot about morale and just being able to laugh and have fun together.
Well, we couldn't help but feature the winner as our photo of the day. So here is Cameron Bird, the winner of the merman contest from Wayway-Sakapo First Nation. Seen here lounging on a rock. He won $100 And if you have any mermen in your nation, or anywhere else for that matter, you can send those photos along to us. Send your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 26 for Halifax, showers, and 19 in Fredericton. 7 with rain in Kuujjuaq, rain, and 4 in Nain. 28 with showers in Montreal, 27 with showers in Chibougamau. Rain and 18 in Sault Ste. Marie, 22 for North Bay. 22 in Thunder Bay, 20 and cloudy in Kapuskasing. 16 in God's Lake, 21 for Norway House. 31 in Winnipeg, 29 in Dauphin. Sunny and 31 in Regina, rain and 31 for Saskatoon. 29 with showers in Meadow Lake and Buffalo Narrows. In northern Alberta, rain and 21 for Fort Chip, 19 with showers in High Level. 28 with rain in Edmonton, showers and 20 in Lethbridge. 19 with rain for Vancouver, sun's out and 20 for Victoria. Sunny and 21 for Prince George and Smithers. 16 in Old Crow and Whitehorse, where rain is expected. 17 with showers in Yellowknife, 20 with rain in Norman Wells. 7 in Sax Harbor, 9 for Pawlatuck. 4 in Chesterfield, 10 for Arviat. 3 in Resolute, plus 2 in Arctic Bay. Canada Post has just announced another commemorative stamp, and this time it's featuring a political leader from British Columbia who helped shape rights and title in this country. The late Grand Chief George Manuel of the Neskonlith Indian Band is the latest to be featured on a Canada Post stamp. Manuel's contributions as a political leader are legendary. He became president of the National Indian Brotherhood in 1970. The NIB, of course, now the Assembly of First Nations. The stamp was released at an event held in North Vancouver.
It's being released on June 21st. And it's important to our family because, as many people know, he gave his entire life to the people. And he was, an amazing leader who led regionally and nationally and internationally, and was honored many times for all of his achievements, from fighting the White Paper Policy in 1969 to leading and building the National Indian Brotherhood, to leading the Constitution Express, which had our rights entrenched in the Constitution in Section 35.
That is one great looking stamp there. Always good to hear from Doreen too, a former guest on Face to Face, where we spoke about her father's legacy and her own filmmaking career. Well, speaking of Face to Face, you can stick around for an encore presentation of our interview with Dr. Alika LaFontaine. That's coming up in less than a minute's time. We're all out of time for your Tuesday newscast. You can find more over on our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy, thanks for being with us. Have a great night.